Yeah, if you have like a fake fear of failure as a journalist, fear of something bad happening to my family, those are all stresses and pressures that we are subjected to. So if the stress levels are high, then we can go to an advanced level of stress. Always living in a very high level of stress, this will take us into a burnout phase. So, being journalists, you always have deadlines. So you have to work very hard, very hardly, very quickly. Pressures from the authorities, from the community, people talking to you, people pushing you. So you're living a higher level of stress. With time, your nerves might be burnt out. So with time, then everything will lose its meaning. It will lose its taste. Will lose the aim, especially for work, and then you will feel like, or those people who will feel burnt out, they will feel like the feeling of guilt. They will not be furtherly motivated. Okay, okay. So you have asked a question. Are there any people who hadn't suffered any psychological trauma? So for me, how can I know as a person, as an individual, am I going through trauma or is it just regular anxiety? Because, for us, the journalists in the Middle East, yeah, definitely they have some kind of a psychological shock. But at the same time, many of the journalists cannot differentiate between the anxiety and the psychological trauma. As you have just said, there might be concerns that somebody is watching me, somebody is threatening my life or the life of my family. So how can I know? Can I tell the difference between the anxiety real, anxiety or real trauma or psychological trauma? Okay, the psychological trauma comes after a series of strikes or shocks. For me as a person, after this shock, after this strike, after this trauma, it changed me. It changed me from before the trauma. So this trauma in itself, it is a negative trauma, let's say. Do you have an example? Yeah, for example, being arrested and torture. Another example is a colleague killed before my eyes. Another example is being subjected to being insulted or tortured or even sexual abuse. So there is a big cocktail of that, a big wide variety. Okay, so we want to differentiate between the anxiety. Yeah, okay, so the anxiety is a high level of stress throughout a prolonged period that causes me to be burnt out. So living for a prolonged period with fear. The anxiety is a high concentrated level of stress for a short period of time. This is the difference. So you are just subjected to both types. It's not just a trauma thing. Within our work with the journalists, we cannot say journalists have been subjected to psychological trauma, but because they're already living a very high level of stress throughout their lives, sometimes from time to time they might be subjected to a big shock or trauma that changes their life. Sometimes with a certain trauma, you feel that your life is turned upside down. Okay, regarding the field reporters, I'm sure that they are subjected to such situations, but for those reporters who know what they want to write, but they do not go to the field, can they be subjected to the psychological trauma? Okay, I'll ask you. How many of you cover painful events and incidents and living this fear and living those incidents or fearful incidents? So the materials that the topics that you are writing on, are they painful? People that you're meeting, people who are in pain, who are crying, who cried before you, and also other people being killed before your eyes. How many of you went through such situations and covered painful incidents? Mostly, yes. So here we can differentiate between a trauma that I have been subjected to that may be PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, and also vicarious trauma. When you see a lot of pain, people who are shocked and traumatized, this might be vicarious to you. This is like you're getting it. It's a secondary trauma. It's not like being subjected to it, but also seeing it or meeting with people who have been subjected to trauma with toxic stress materials with time with a prolonged period of time. This causes us to be burnt out, but we name it as a vicarious trauma. The difference between the vicarious trauma and between the burnout, just for us to understand. So for the burnout, I live with the burnout, I lose the meaning of work, the good taste of work. But for the vicarious trauma, it makes me lose the taste of my life as a whole, not only my work. So many of you have, I'm sure, have covered a lot of incidents in Syria, Libya, Yemen, war incidents. With time, you're not only subjected to burnout because of this burnout, no, but you are also could be subjected to vicarious trauma because you are witnessing a lot of pains. Okay, so talking about the different types of shocks, trauma, anxiety, etc. Do you want to share any of your experiences with us? The same, the opportunity is available for people participating online also. Mike, please.
لحظة في ميكروفون آخر. Sorry. كيف هنا؟
Please. Yeah.
واحدة للمترجمة وواحدة للفيسبوك لايف.
So can the PTSD or the psychological trauma for the journalist be occurring because of one situation or more than one situation? So is it a result from more than one incident happening or more than one trauma, or is it a series of events, like after working for 1 or 2 years, a big change will happen with the way of their thinking or their mental status, or etc., or is it just a big stress, big trauma that happened one time? Thank you for your question. So the idea is that usually one might be impacted by one trauma, but based on my work with the journalists, they do not get traumatized from one shock only or one strike only. No, this trauma starts from their childhood. It's like a complex trauma. Yeah. It is not only one trauma. So the person who may be subjected to complex trauma, it's like varied types of trauma. That's why it's really important to attend such sessions in order to raise the awareness for people that yes, people might be adaptive or might adapt some way or another with the first trauma, but this may cause accumulation of traumas. Maybe, and this is really important, watch for this point, the psychological trauma maybe like 23%, 24, 25%, like this is the percentage of the people who may be traumatized and then get the symptoms of psychological trauma. Another important point to know is that each one of us handle trauma in a different way. So what you consider a trauma is not considered a trauma for other people, and this is really subjective. But yeah, and as an answer for your question, yeah, they can be subjected to complex trauma, to many types of trauma. I have another question, please.
لحظة
Two mics, sir. I suddenly feel so important. Okay. Usually, we handle or we deal with the traumas on a daily basis in our lives as journalists. But our solution is just keep going on, and then it will go on its own. But now you gave me a red flag that I should stop right here. That there is something that I should treat and stop everything else. Yeah, this is a really good question too. Unfortunately, many of you are so stubborn to the extent that they say, I will treat myself. And how do they treat themselves? Not now. I'll postpone it. I'll just forget in the future. It works with some cases, with some issues. Yeah, I may work on a case and then it will go. But most of the traumas, they do not just go away. It is just like a volcano and lava. You know how lava is down and then at any sudden moment, usually after 6 months, it just explodes. It's not necessary for me if I was traumatized and it was really painful and then after a week I was like, oh, finally I'm okay. It is not conditional to be hidden for a long time. It will have an impact later after 6 months or even 1 or 2 years. So it's really important that if I started the treatment, the sooner the better. Sometimes we just think that we are so strong, we will handle it on our own. Yeah, I'm strong enough to handle it. But no, it doesn't work this way. It's not treated this way. And sometimes we cover it or we cover on it like with the negative with a negative adaptation. It's like over sexual life, extreme sexual life, or drinking alcohol, or just having the numbing feeling, or excuse me, sorry. So as an answer to your question, the sooner you get the treatment, the more the benefit is, and the more benefit you get, and also the quicker you get out of that status. I'll tell you now about the symptoms. So two more questions, and then we will continue. A question here in the front. Please hold two mics.
الميكروفونين لحظة في كمان ميكروفون آخر.
Wait, sir, just a little bit. Thank you.
آدم
Adam
مهدي.
Mahdi
آدم مهدي. دارفور 24.
from Darfur, and my age is 24. And I just need to know the difference between anxiety and psychological trauma. So I'll tell you my experience. In Darfur, I have witnessed fights and wars, and I have seen people being killed before my eyes. And I have covered a lot of riots in Sudan, and I have seen a lot of blood and dead bodies. So after something started to happen to me, like I have after the coverage, I would get severe headache, and on the next day, I do not care about work a lot. I don't know, is this anxiety or is this psychological trauma? On the other hand, I was arrested from January till April, and I felt like I'm absent-minded and like that. So I really cannot tell the difference. Can I treat myself, or is it just anxiety that I can overcome, or how? But I haven't met any psychiatrist or yeah, I haven't met any psychiatrist before. It's clear that you are traumatized. So the trauma may lead to anxiety, but what you have now, because you have witnessed, you are an eyewitness. So you have the vicarious trauma, and also you are yourself, like you have the PTSD, post-trauma stress disorder. So you have both. Anxiety in itself is just being fearful for your future, the fear of the unknown. If any one of you is keen about their life and you are strictly organized, so you're fighting the unknown, that's why you have a little bit of anxiety. We all suffer a little bit of anxiety at one level or another. But when you have like those panic attacks or anxiety attacks with rapid heart palpitation, dizziness, etc. So this is a panic attack. This is the classification under anxiety, under the panic. So I'm scared or I'm concerned that something really dangerous that might happen. But what you're saying, now we will be talking about the symptoms. Okay, the symptoms of the psychological trauma. That's why I want you to understand why I told you that you have why you are traumatized. So regarding the trauma, it just like scatters us. It's like the symptoms is that we are going back and forth between feeling numb, like my numb feelings. I don't feel the happiness, the joy, or the sadness, or the madness. It's like out of sync. I'm not walking hand by hand with the people. So it is like having numb feeling, but at the same time, at a point, I will make this to a person, and this person will be like a monster. At one point, the person will be exploding. So it's like not having steady emotions, even for our look towards ourselves. One might be wondering about him or herself. What am I? Okay, I'm a journalist, but so there will be wondering about the identity of the person, and also then will be sleeping disturbances. Maybe we oversleep, or we have like interrupted sleeping, or even staying up late. Or maybe we have flashbacks. Sometimes, maybe during the day, I could like all of a sudden have a flashback, remember the incident, and relive the whole thing. So we will be living the present, but at the same time going back and forth to the past. Also, the trauma causes us to isolate ourselves. So yeah, I'm with happy people, but they don't really understand me. Why would I pretend? So I will be isolated. So getting isolated from this society. Some of those people will get even social phobia. So maybe if they are forced to sit within a group of people, then they will be sitting back, or they will be having breathing disturbances and disorders. Okay, till the microphones go to the back, I have a question. From the European aspect, will they be giving medications? Are you pro or against? With or against? So, generally speaking, if a person is traumatized, in general, a trauma itself, a psychological trauma, doesn't have a medication. It is treated, but without medication. The medication treats anxiety, depression, because trauma may cause anxiety or depression, but as a treatment, no. Because the trauma changes the way our brains work. So with time, we wouldn't understand ourselves. We wouldn't be feeling ourselves. So here in the brain, there is a part that reads our body. With time, it just fades away. And then we have, it's like an antenna over here that reads outside. And then it gets strengthened a lot. So it will be making it will make us feel that the people outside are becoming monsters or enemies that are working against us or fighting us. So that needs to be treated. So I cannot read myself, but I can read the whole world and expect danger. So I would be hyper vigilant. Hasanan, my question is that most of us work in the Middle East and covering disasters in our own countries. So my question is, what are the precautionary measures in order not to have a double impact? So I am subjected to a pressure as a journalist and as a human being living in this country. So it's like a double impact. double shock, double trauma. Yeah, your question is really good because the symptoms of the trauma and the idea of the trauma of people who are covering wars on their lands, on certain lands, and then going back to their home countries. That's why it's called post-traumatic, like a while after. But for you guys covering incidents in your own countries, wars in your own countries, so you are living the trauma. So it is not post, you are living it. So the treatment would differ. I will be discussing the methods of treatment, but it means that if I want to adapt the environment, adapt with the environment around me to divide it between the war and peace, even if it's my own country, but I should find some time to be just to get myself away from this stress. We will be talking about the methodologies of treatment. So also through the click meeting, Iman from Egypt asks, how can I overcome my panic and flashback from places where I have been to and I was traumatized in those places. So the question is that if we get to know that a person was traumatized and then she like has a complex now, a psychological complex from that place, from the area. So, and if she doesn't have to be there throughout her life, no, she has to. That's the problem. She has to go there on a daily basis. Okay, that's a problem now. Okay, then if it's not necessary for her to go there, then she doesn't really need to go there. It's not a matter of torture. Okay, but if you have to go there, then you should get treatment. How are you going to get treated? One of the methodologies is under like the behavioral treatment. So we can do reprocessing to rephrase or reprocess the trauma in order to prepare her till she gets relaxed from the trauma until she gets into that zone. So now we have got to the treatment phase. What are the various treatments that you recommend to any journalist or media personnel to try to treat themselves? Okay. This is an important question. So it should be important. So all of you are covering wars, news, conflicts, investigations, investigative journalism that risk your lives within your own country. We're not talking about a person who flew into a country, got traumatized, and then went out. We're talking about people who are getting traumatized on a daily basis in their own countries. So we should distinguish and differentiate between peace and war. Pre and post? Do you mean pre and post? No. It means like the idea of war. If I'm covering a war, this is a war time. If I'm covering an investigative article that is very risky to my life, threatens my life, then I will put it under the framework of a work. So you should consider that once you went and covered those news, then you are sacrificing your lives, and your emotions. You will be shocked. You will be traumatized, definitely. You should expect it. Do not say, no, not me. Once you approve covering this war, then you're just traumatized. So the treatment or the solution is that after finishing, after being traumatized, how can I treat myself? You should take that into consideration. It's not like, I finished this coverage, I want to move to another piece. No. Okay, you have covered this piece. Tension, stress, you'll be traumatized some way or another. You will be partly burnt out from the massive stress that you are subjected to. So, but I'm going back. After this coverage, I should take care of myself. I shouldn't just jump into another project, another story, or another article. I should take time out to rest and take care of myself, my trauma. This is the advantage for the non-war zones, the people who are not living in a war zone. But for those who feel that I do not have this luxury of taking 1 week off, 4, 5, 6. Do you have the luxury? This is a question. Do you have the luxury of taking a week off after covering a stressful event?
طب اوكي لحظه
Okay.
لحظه
Just a
لحظة،
second.
لو سمحتوا،
Please,
لحظة.
please, please.
في ايضا مشاركين ايضا موجودين معنا عن طريق الفيسبوك لايف وعن
We
طريق
have
فلو
participants
سمحتوا،
throughout
واحد تلو آخر.
Facebook,
هنحاول نعطي لكل واحد وكل
so
واحدة
please,
من
one
ذلك
time and
حوار.
another.
ميكروفون هنا لو سمحتوا.
Mic here, please.
ميكروفونات سباستيان كان وفي ميكروفون آخر كمان جاي.
And another mic over there, so please hold both mics.
أنا بس حابة أتكلم بموضوع أنت اتكلمت فيه وكأنه
I
هو
want to talk
مراحل.
about a topic that you mentioned. It's like phases,
الكوابيس، موضوع
like
موضوع
nightmares,
سؤال عن
anxiety,
وكأنها مراحل أنا أتكلم بيها لأنه
wondering about the
أنا
identity or losing the identity. I'm talking about that because I
لكن
know it very well.
لما واحد
But
يكون
when one
بيحس إنه بينعاد
feels
لما بيصير
that
حدث
they get
مفاجأ
back their
بعد ذاك.
balance when
أنا
another
بعد عن الصحافة فترة
sudden a sudden or a trauma happens again, or a sudden incident happens again. Like I have been away from journalism for a long while, but once the protests came again, I felt like I want to go back to journalism. Yeah, but you give yourself time to relax. Yeah, but I still wonder about the identity, skepticism. It is the crisis of looking for oneself, for the identity. Why have I chosen journalism? It is redundant and repeats a lot. It is repeated a lot with the journalists, and it causes anxiety. So I'm still wondering. I'm still wondering about my identity, my value as a human being, about my value as a journalist. Although that it is there and it is valuable and acknowledged, yet I have chosen to go back to work. Okay, this takes me to another question. Do you see yourselves as media people or activists or both? Okay, let me talk about myself. I live in a luxury in London. My mom is in Germany. My mom is German. I have studied journalism, and I have been working in the field of journalism in the Arab countries. But I see myself that I am a journalist, that I am here only to give a voice or to cover a certain event. But I'm not here to give my opinion on something or on what's happening. So how do you see yourselves? We will answer to your question. Yeah. Okay, so I feel, as an answer to your question, we have both. I am from Gaza. When there's a war, it doesn't work to be only a journalist. I cannot be. I have to be an activist. But do you get your opinion in a news, a piece of news that you make in the news? No, but on Facebook, yes, I do. Another thing is that not only covering the incidents and writing the stories, we are also a part of the incident. Maybe at one point, suddenly, my colleague might write about me, about my death, or about what happened to me. So even though we cover stories of other people, others may cover our story because we're subjected to danger at all times. We're threatened all the times, whether as just human beings or even as journalists. So this causes us to have a total numb feeling. Why? Because I'm not going to use this word of that life and death are equal to us. But if we are going to be shelled, then a rocket that will kill us all. Yeah, but this numbness comes as a result from stress. This is really usual for us in Gaza. Oh, yeah. But if you're stressed for a prolonged period of time, then you feel that life is meaningless. Another thing is that we feel always under stress because, Gaza stands on a straw. We sleep and at night nothing is going on, and then in the morning we wake up on the sound of the shellings and the rockets. And you will see that many of the journalists, they have the same type of problems, this type of stress. But you need to communicate the voice of the people. Also, your fear for your life, for your family, for your things. But at the same time, you need to raise the morals and motivate your audience. That's why we are practicing both roles, whether as activists and as journalists. Is this an intervention or a question? Good. Thank you for your work at the beginning. I want to say something. Once, my teacher told me that if during your job, when you're on the job, and you're covering news, you should always be vigilant and alert that you may be covering the story of the killing of your colleague. So my question, does this need a special type of awareness raising? So, so her question is like, does my teacher have the necessary awareness or not? Okay, let's see. Were you scared when your teacher told you this? Is it a matter of the teacher having no awareness or preparing you to expect the worst? So you now are like expecting the strike, and so this maybe his intent is really good, but had a negative reflection for you. Mike, she's not using the mic. I'm sorry. So unfortunately, that's why those sessions are important in order to normalize the idea of talking about psychological issues, because all of you are subjected to such problems, and even the management should work with you on that. So maybe the teacher had a good intent, but gave you a really bad impact, or like the way you received it negatively. Okay, let's go back to the question. Okay, here, the story of you going back to your profession. Here, finding yourself or being enthusiastic about a very important incident that you want to cover. So here it takes you back. If you are covering this incident, then your feeling will be like the activist inside you, that you want to be a part of this incident, the thing that motivates you. So here, if it's the case, then after you analyze your identity, are you a journalist, a reporter? Yes or no? That's why it's unnecessary for us. Sometimes you, amongst each other, you find a person on Facebook, very active, on the newspaper, very successful in terms of media, very successful, and all people envy him or her, that he or she is the best. But inside, they would be devastated. And this might be any one of you. So this is a big difference. So yes, you may perform your job. Maybe you are limping on a fractured leg, but still you're working and you're putting pressure on yourself. So we should differentiate between our mental status when we're doing the job. It's unnecessary that if we are functioning and operating, that yeah, we are okay. No, sooner or later, you will fall down. Amongst the other methodologies, that we should have a circle of trust. with their colleagues, family, friends, who that I can vent to. I think also that this has other negativities. So I have told you about my mother. She's German. When I came here to the Middle East, she would die 1,000 times each morning. She would message me in the morning, in the afternoon, and the evening. And recently, I was in an Eastern European country. She would be sending me messages all the time. So I want to protect her in order to stop her from being this anxious whenever I go to a field job.
نحن انتم كلكم مثل عندكم كذا هات كذا عندكم كذا دور انتم صحفيين ابن بنت لاهلها
You all have different roles in life, different hats. You are a family member, reporters, a sister, brother, father, mother. You are friends for other people, so balancing between the different roles is not an easy thing. So you shouldn't think of your life as a reporter. You have other roles in your life, and you need to balance those different roles. I should ask myself, can I balance? How can I balance? How can I reduce the stress for myself and for the family members? Because reducing the stress for family members will reduce the stress placed on me. So this is what we call privacy management. How much information you need to give to your family to reassure them and not to place pressure on you. So don't tell them wrong information and don't tell them too much. So privacy management is very important. You need to know what kind of information and the amount of information you provide to your family. But do not throw them into the unknown, because this will create more anxiety to your family members. I hope that I answered your question. In addition, if I am suffering from a psychological trauma, the first thing I need to do is to find specific people, not all family members, not all friends, one or two from your family, sometimes maybe zero from your family. One of your friends that you trust to talk to. I trust that whatever I talk to them or tell them, they won't look at me in a wrong way. They will understand me and accept me. Understand and accept. So your job is to choose this person. And if you don't have this person in your life, you need to go to a specialized expert, because he can help you to understand and to find a person who can understand and accept. Do you have this kind of person in your life today, the person I talked about? A person who accepts you the way you are, no matter what you do, what you say. For those who say no, what's your advice to them? Well, if you're okay now in your life, it's fine, but you need to find someone in the future. Isolating yourself from the social life is very bad. According to a study one of the factors to live long is to have a good social life. Good social life reflects positively on your health and on your mental, physical, and psychological health. Or someone doesn't have that person in their life, what should they do? Well, they need to work on finding someone like this in their lives. So in case they suffer from a psychological trauma, God forbid, they'll have someone to talk to. So it's better to search for someone before you are in the trauma phase. We have a participation from Gaza, from Amr. He's saying that I have been recently feeling the regret to work in the journalism profession because of the cases we see and we cover, such as wars and battles in Gaza. How can I and others overcome this status and this feeling? Well, it depends.
هلا فكره انا ساعتها المفروض اداره القلق.
Here we can talk of anxiety management, and it needs a lot of time, maybe a whole separate session to talk about. But anxiety management goes through work. What intimidates me, what causes fear to me, I need to manage them. Some anxiety can be controlled, other anxieties can't be controlled.
فانا يعني اذا شخص يعني هذا فينا نقول له اياه، اذا شخص اليوم ما قدران يا اما يعالج حاله،
If a person,
على حاله
for example,
تاعه مزبوط، يا اما اذا ما بيقدر ساعتها
a person needs to manage anxiety. If he can't or she can't, they need to change the profession. Our profession, our work shouldn't cause that much anxiety to us. If it does, we need to change it. So we need to manage the things we can manage. Things we can't manage or control, we need to find alternatives. We only have 15 minutes, and before the time is up, I have questions. How can we fix ourselves? How can I fix ourselves? We talked about finding backup for you, people who accept you and understand you. We also talked about how to protect our families, how to take care of ourselves. What else?
يعني شو اسمه اولا بالاضافه حكينا عنه نحن بدنا نشتغل على جسمنا.
In addition to what we said, we need to fix ourselves not just mentally or psychologically, but we need to fix ourselves physically as well, because the trauma has reflections on our bodies. In other words, if I feel that I'm not comfortable with myself, today I need to live a healthy lifestyle. I need to exercise. I need to work out, like walk 3 times for 1 hour per week. And this will save you a lot of, this will spare you a lot of medicine. Jogging, walking, sweating is very important. It relieves stress. So you're actually venting out all the stress gradually by walking, jogging, and talking to people. Another thing is to find a rhythm for our lives. We said that trauma shakes the rhythm of the life, the routine of our life routine. So we need to go back to our rhythm, our routine. So, for example, we need to work on the timings for having the different meals during the day, when to work, when to meet people. So organizing your life brings rhythm back to your life. Do activities that have rhythm, like dancing, Zumba in the gym, for example. This is very good. Listening to music, chantings, religious chantings as well. Very soothing to the body and the mind, especially if you used to be used to them. So rhythm is very important. Third point is social activities. I shouldn't be antisocial. I'm sure after you are traumatized, you feel that you will stay by yourself and not talk to people. I understand that, but after a short while, you should go and talk to people. Do against what you feel. Because if you keep yourself to yourself, not talk to people or socialize, this will affect your health and make it even worse. And finally, actually, I forgot what I want to say, but oh no, I now remember. Your senses. Let's say that I'm working with a person in a session. I ask
حس هيدا
him to close his eyes or her eyes and ask
على
them
الارض
to
شلحهم اجرك
feel
حس الارض تحت منهم
this this
انا عم
thing
شغل
on the
حواس
table, or
اللمس
take off your shoes
بس بنفس الوقت احنا
and
فينا
put
نشغل
your
حواس
feet
الشم
on
انه انا
the
لما
ground
اطبخ
or
شم
the floor.
لما بدي
So
اكل
it's
شم
important to
المذاق
heighten our sensation,
المناظر
our
الحلوه
senses,
بمد النظر فيها
whether
اوكي
tasting,
بعد في
seeing,
حواس سمع
smelling,
موسيقى
hearing,
بعد في
music,
توازن
beautiful sights,
لما انتوا عم تمشوا كمان
or
تحسوا
beautiful
بهذا
scenery,
الرhythm يكون
walking like we
بعدين
mentioned
حواس
earlier.
جدا مهمه اللي ممكن كثير تتاثر وقت التروما هي حواس الداخليه لانه انا احس حالي عم جوع عم بتالم حواس اللي بالداخل كمان ارجع استرجع هيدي عاده بتسترجعوها لما بتعملوا مثلا اذا شيء اكسرسايزز يوغا مايندفولنس انه بتحسوا انا مثلا بقول لهم لاشخاص اشربوا مي وحسوا بنقطه المي عم تنزل وين عم توصل حتى خليهم نرجع لهم هالحواس اوكي ففيكم تشتغلوا على الحواس اوكي هلا هيدا الثاني الثالث شغله خاصه كصحفيين انا عم بشتغل مع صحفيين انتم اليوم مضطرين لحتى شوي ترتاحوا يعني تخلطوا بين اخبار مقالات مواضيع جديه مؤلمه
To work on serious, painful
هيك شوي انسانيه حلوه
issues and and
مش
and
تنزلوا
work
بحالكم
on
يعني موضوع معين ضلكم فيه على سنتين ثلاثه
light
عم
issues
بتصير
and
تنسوا
topics as well. So you
يعني
shouldn't
الاشياء
always work on
الايجابيه
serious,
بالحياه لانه هيدا
painful
الشيء بيعملكم
issues
بخليكم
for
تشوفوا الحياه كثير
years
سلبيه
because
انتم عم
this
تركزوا بس
will
على
make
السلبيات
life dark for you. It will make it all negatives. Also, we have a participant who responds to Shaima. He says she can't stop. She always works on. She moves from one issue to another issue, and she looks in. She reads a lot of different topics, serious topics on social media, so she can't. I tell her to stop because in the long run, this is not healthy. This is not right. She needs to stop. If we can't stop at least for one day during the week,
الموبايل على جنب
put the cell phone on the side,
هذا
this is not good for her.
فكره انتم كمان اذا في حال نفسيا تعبانين
If you are not feeling well psychologically, you need to divide your day to 3 parts.
تقسم قسم ساعتين ثلاثه ركز فيه على الشغل
2 to 3 hours to focus on work.
على حالي على جسمي
Second part to focus on my body and mind.
بضيع وقت
And the third one is the leisure time. So what do you mean by leisure time? Staying away from social media? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
ما تخططوا
Waste.
ما تخططوا له
Use your leisure time. Do not plan for your leisure or pastime. You want to watch a Turkish series, for example, for 4-6 hours? Do it. The important thing here is that you say, you put yourself 3 things to work on and do them. If you say you will go to the gym, do it. This is when you feel tired because you've been working for 2 to 3 months continuously. You need to take at least a few days to relax. Do not feel remorse. Do not punish yourself. You deserve it. You need it.
كيف تهتموا بحالكم انتم اليوم لازم كمان توازنوا بين
Today, you also need to balance between the different articles or issues that you work on, those that are important and those that are urgent. There should be difference between them.
بس خلينا نقول هالجمله اليوم انتم بحكم شغلكم يمكن عم تلحقوا انه يلا مقال ورا مقال مثل روبوت
I understand that these days you work like robots.
وتجيبوا مقال
You work on different reports continuously. You don't pause.
حتى نفسيكم ترتاح
But you also have
بيعطيكم رضا
to work on a report or an issue that makes you satisfied. It may take a month or 2, but it's important for your identity. So you need to feel satisfied. You feel like this report is your revenge from injustice in society or injustice that happened to you. So you express through the report. It's not necessarily to be a report. It can be a humanitarian act, not necessarily to other people, but to yourself. You reward yourself. Like you paint, you write. It may be a book that you write. So you need to have this way of thinking that every once in a while I need to have a way to revenge that satisfies myself. Final question?
الميكروفون الجاي.
I can't hear. Please, the mic. Dr. Khaled talked about the voice that causes buzzing in our heads. Can you please explain more the sound or the buzzing sound in our head? So what does it say to you? Well, under stress, it says negative things, like Madonna speaks to Madonna. Yeah, for example. So how can we handle it? How can we stop it? We deal with different escalations in life, so how can we stop? So this sound or buzzing sound is not totally negative. It prepares you to react. A lot of times you talk to yourself to prepare for interviews, to prepare for work, but in general, any sound in your mind is not necessarily negative. Especially when you're screaming, for example, you're venting out. But anyway, to get rid of it, you need to do something different. Talk to people, work, write. Just make yourself busy with something else. Because this sound you have in mind or the dialogue, it comes from stress. One more final question. What's a quick question? I'm Faisal Saad from Sudan. I work in the ARIJ network. I ask about with reconciliation with traumas. Let's say that a trauma occurred again after 2 or 3 years. In 2013, I lived in a war zone, and there was a lot of shelling, continuous shelling. After few years, I attended the disperse of demonstrations in the same area, and I felt while covering this demonstration as if I was living in it. What can I do? So we can classify this under re-traumatization, that the trauma happens again. So the second event or incident made you remember the first one. So here the trauma is happening again or reminding you of a previous one. So that's why we're saying it's important to fix traumas, not to wait and say that time will heal me or will fix me. No, you need to fix yourself. Go back in time, clean up different traumas. Sometimes you may need to write about them and to get all the feelings surfaced and vented out. This will help you heal and will make them less stressful in the future. Trauma has 3 parts: event, memory, and feelings associated with the memory. So the trauma healing focuses on the feelings, not on the memory. So you need to work on the memories that surface when you remember the trauma. So you need to know the feelings and work on them. It may be painful, but it's good that you write them down or find another way to clean up those feelings. It's even better to talk to someone about them, but do not be intimidated. Do not fear them and do not run away from them. Unfortunately, we come to the end of this workshop. If you have additional questions, inquiries, comments that you would like to share with us, please join the Facebook group. You can see them on the information on the flyer, Champions of Media. This is the last episode of 2019, but we will continue in 2020. We will have new topics and new episodes, and until then, you still can participate in this group by asking different questions and raising different comments. You will find this session on the Facebook group under the today's date. We have Dr. Khaled, our expert, and Ms. An-Najjar is one of the other experts who joined us here today. To participate next year, if you view 5 episodes, after those 5 episodes, you can take a certificate as mentioned in the beginning of this workshop. Thank you for coming here, and thanks for who joined us on Facebook, and sorry for the technical issues or glitches we had. Thank you very much.